Hey everyone, welcome to Massachusetts Sports Central. This is our NFL Power Rankings after Week 14 of the season. Just a reminder to everyone what these Power Rankings are. This list represents how likely we think that each team will win Super Bowl 52. It is not an ordered list of the best teams necessarily. It also isn't a random list based on who beat who last week. So basically, this list is less reactionary than many of these other types of power rankings. There is a little more movement than the last few weeks, with a lot of the bottom teams from last week winning and more than half of last week's top 10 losing. We still have the same basic clustering from the last few weeks, but besides the movement at the top and the bottom, the AFC playoff bubble tier has a bit of shuffling as well. Okay, on to the rankings. Number 32, staying put, the Cleveland Browns lost again. Competitive, lost in overtime. That's just, but it's a loss is a loss. They're the only winless team, and just losing like that again is demoralizing instead of pathetic, I guess. I don't know if that's better or worse. All right, number 31 is also staying put, the New York Football Giants. They have the second worst record in the league, so not too shocking about that. They lost again this week. They actually hung with the Cowboys for the first three quarters pretty well. But you're talking about a bad team when the compliment is that they gave up 20 points in the fourth quarter. So they're your Giants. All right, number 30, moving down three slots, the Indianapolis Colts. They played as well as could be expected for the most part in that crazy snow blizzard game in Buffalo, but they lost. And now they currently have the, other than Cleveland, they are the worst team in the AFC record-wise, tied for the third worst in the NFL, so that's why they're right here. And they aren't showing much either. That's the other thing. There's, this isn't all based on record, because we'll see that the team that they are tied with is quite a bit higher up. Number 29, the Houston Texans, moving down four slots. So they got beaten pretty convincingly by the 49ers. A team that is definitely trending up, but is still nowhere near good. Basically, the Texans are only better than the Colts and the Browns in real life and in these power rankings in the AFC. Number 28, moving up two slots, the Denver Broncos. The Broncos are still not very good, and I don't expect too much from them. Maybe they could pull off some more wins the rest of this year. Who knows? But they, a week after getting completely destroyed by what was considered to be a very bad Miami team, they came out and absolutely destroyed what's considered to be a not very good, but, resilient Jets team. Kind of the defense kind of showed that they could still, with a shutout, they were able to show that they can still do something, even if the offense is still nothing special, as long as they don't just dig them a hole that's almost impossible to get out of, that the defense can step up and really still play. So that could be a good sign moving forward for them for next season, but it's only a slight moral victory for this year. Number 27, the Chicago Bears, moving up two slots. They absolutely killed the Bengals. Now, I don't think anything of the Bengals, but, in my game picks, I said I could have seen this going either way. I did pick Cincinnati just because they were the home team for the most part. So the Bears winning didn't surprise me, but I never would have expected them to put up over 30 points and just absolutely blow the Cincinnati out of the water like that. So, good for them. But again, they are, record-wise, they're tied for the third worst team in the NFC. So, there's only so much you can do about that. Number 26, a team they are tied with, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, staying put at number 26. They lost, but they only lost by 3, and they made a little comeback at the end, so, that's nice. But they fell short, so that's, again, you can't really do too much. Can really move them down just because pretty much all the teams behind them are clearly worse, or at least, within the margin. And I don't know. I don't feel that the Bears or Broncos wins were so amazing that I was going to move them ahead of the Bucs, who I think is a slightly better team. Number 25, moving down 4 slots. Because we were just talking about their absolute destruction by the Bears, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't know what happened to the Bungles in that game. Wow. Just wow. They aren't a good team, but the Bears sure as heck aren't a good team either. And getting absolutely killed by them at home is pretty embarrassing. Um, Again, if it wasn't for the fact they're still technically mathematically alive for the playoffs, it's probably that and the fact that some of these other teams below them are just so god awful as well. Is the only reason they're as good as they're. This is kind of this is kind of opposite of what I was saying several weeks ago, where I kind of wanted to rank a dozen teams in like the 20 to 25 range. I kind of want to rank about 10 teams in the like 28 and below level right now, with these Bungles being one of them. All right, number 24, also moving down 5 slots, the New York Jets. Getting absolutely blown out by the Broncos is, again, pretty pathetic. Now, they were at least in Denver, and they did at some point lose their starting quarterback, McCown, with a broken hand, who unfortunately is going to be done for the year, which also means that they have a much worse chance of pulling off any more upsets the rest of this year. Even if they don't do anything else, they certainly greatly exceeded expectations, and they have to be complimented on what they were able to accomplish this year. But like I said, McCown playing very well was one of the big reasons they were able to outperform expectations significantly. So with him out, that knocked them down as much as the fact that they lost to the Broncos, in my opinion here. But again, still mathematically alive for the playoffs. Starting next week, I will take that much more into consideration, because I definitely have a few teams that are out of the playoffs ahead of teams that are still alive in the playoffs, which based on my own criteria of likelihood of winning Super Bowl 52 is not actually really accurate. But after next week, that's not going to be too much of an issue, because you're only going to have like at least decent teams still alive, I would guess. All right. Anyway, moving on. Number 23, the San Francisco 49ers. I believe they're the big mover of the week, moving up 5. So they actually do have they are eliminated from the playoffs. And as I said, there's at least, I believe, 3 AFC teams that I have them ahead of that are not. The last 2, as well as the Texans, are actually still alive, I believe. But they are in a 2-game winning streak now. They beat the Bears and they beat the Texans, so let's not get too carried away on how awesome they are. But they are definitely showing some promise and have a little bit brighter future than a lot of the teams that they are ranking ahead of right now. And they're definitely not an easy out right now, so that's another kind of big thing. I don't see them really pulling off any more games, but if they do, it's going to be big, because they have 2 home games the next 2 weeks against Tennessee and Jacksonville. So they could actually be the kingmaker in the AFC South if they win one and lose one. That could make a really, really big difference in that division. Especially if they beat Tennessee and lose to Jacksonville, that pretty much will ice. I think actually that would just ice the division essentially for the Jaguars. If it's the other way around, then all of a sudden the Titans are right back in it again too. So it could be could be beating the 49ers is a big deal for both of those teams right now, and it's not a given. So good job that they are making a little progress there, and nice to see Jimmy G playing pretty well. All right, number 22, staying put, the Washington Redskins. They lost really bad. I was thinking I would drop them even more, but again, the Jets got destroyed, the Bengals got destroyed, the Bucks lost. Like, couldn't really move them much farther down than that, and I moved the 49ers up so much already. Just pretty much just kept the Skins there for that. They've been decimated by injuries. I think they would be doing better if they had not had as many of those problems. But in the end, they're going to be third in the division. They're going to most likely be sub 500. So back to the drawing board. All right, number 21, moving up 2 slots, the Arizona Cardinals. Not a pretty win, but it was a win. I feel pretty much every time they win, they move into the category of in my opinion, as the worst team with X number of wins. Right now, I think they're the worst team with 6 or more wins right now. However, they have 6 wins, so that's a lot better than all the teams behind them, and a couple of the teams I even have ahead of them. So, and I guess one team I have ahead of them. Or no, I guess it's no team has less wins ahead of them. Sorry. Anyway, um, yeah, I mean, I think that the 12-7 win over Tennessee shows more that you have to be concerned about Tennessee than that the Cardinals are anything amazing. Um, they played hard and they won. That's, you got to give them credit for that, but they're still just not a good team, and they're not going anywhere. I think they are the last team still alive in the playoffs for the NFC, but I mean, like I said, that's just not going to happen, and we'll take that into account more next week, as I said. All right, number 20, moving up 4 slots, the Miami Dolphins. Never would have expected them to beat the Patriots. I know that except for last year, that the Pats have lost 3 of 4 in Miami, so it's shouldn't be as shocking, but still, that team had been pretty bad. Didn't give much thought to the fact that they had dominated the Broncos the week before, because a lot of people have been dominating the Broncos. But the fact that I don't know, it was a crazy game. The Pats definitely just did not play well, but the Dolphins definitely stepped up and played pretty well. Now, I do think it does kind of show the discrepancy in the quality of those two teams, just that New England only lost by a touchdown when they were clearly outplayed by a lot more than a touchdown most of that game. But good for the Dolphins. They ain't going anywhere. Again, they're still mathematically alive for the playoffs, but that's about all you can say. They're going to be eliminated fairly quickly. And they moved them up 4 slots. Every team above them actually has a not ridiculously unrealistic shot at the playoffs. So basically, I do have them as the best of the complete, absolute non-contenders. So speaking of the lowest tier contender we have left, number 19, the Dallas Cowboys, moving down 2 slots. Even though they won, and they won by 20 points, they did just beat the Giants, so it's not like they beat a great team or anything. This just has more to do with looking at. Essentially, we're still gonna have the cluster of the 3 teams in the NFC with the same record that have most likely need to win out and get a little help in order to make the playoffs. The reason that they are behind Green Bay and Detroit is they have a harder schedule than the Lions, and they lose the tiebreaker to Green Bay. So they have to outperform Green Bay in order to get in. So they have to win out and hope that Green Bay does not win out, even if they get all the other help that they need. With the Lions, I guess I don't know exactly how the tiebreakers are going to work, because you have to go down another level in that case. But they have a harder schedule. The Lions have a very easy schedule. They have 2 cupcakes and then Green Bay. So they have a much better chance of being able to run the table, depending on how Green Bay is performing. So this is why Dallas is moving down, even though that they won, and their playoff chances did not go down at all. Just looking at it relative to the teams right around them. So one of those teams right around them, number 18, the Green Bay Packers, up 1 slot. As I just mentioned, they more or less probably have to run the table without getting a ridiculous amount of help from other teams. But they have a very tough schedule. They have the Panthers, and then they have the Vikings, and then they finish with Detroit. So those are all 3 pretty tough games. Now, I know they generally don't have trouble with Detroit, but Detroit has the same record as them. They did lose to them earlier. Granted, that was a Hundley-led game. So if Rodgers is back, and by then it will be his 3rd game back if he's playing, so you would assume that even if he's rusty or anything like that, he should be as close to full strength as possible by the time he gets to that Lions game. I don't know if that will make the difference or not, but that certainly is a factor, and one reason you would definitely discount the earlier loss. Though the earlier loss will be important in the tiebreakers, because they can't possibly tie since they play each other. Forget that. Never mind. Anyway, so those 3 teams, very unlikely to make the playoffs. Only one of them will end up having a shot, and between Green Bay and the Lions, really only, since they play each other, only one of them even has a shot. So I gave the edge to the Lions just because they have a much easier schedule. They're much more likely to win 2 games going into the Green Bay game than the Green Bay is. All right, number 16. All right, the bottom of the AFC playoff pile. We have the Oakland Raiders moving down 2 slots. Their chances are very, 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 very low this week after losing to Kansas City. Not zero, because their division is pretty weak, and the bottom slot or 2 slots in the AFC wildcard are also pretty weak. So they're not completely out of it, but they certainly need to get some help, and they can't lose any more games, and they need to get some help in order to make it happen. But looking at all the teams that are right around them, it's not that far-fetched that could possibly happen. So let's talk some of those other teams. Number 15, the Buffalo Bills, moving up 1 slot. I guess technically they're actually in the playoff slot right now. They won their game. They gutted it out and such. They do have a tough schedule ahead of them. And right now, like I said, they're tied with the Ravens. Though I guess with them winning and Baltimore losing, I think the tiebreaker is shifted this week because of that. I don't expect that to continue, so that's why we're going to see Baltimore's ahead of them. Spoiler alert, not that far ahead of the next team we're going to talk about. They're playing the Patriots. Maybe they can do something. Obviously, we saw the Dolphins do something, but this game is going to be in Foxborough, and obviously the Pats. Well, I guess it depends on what happens with the Steeler game, but really, even if the Pats win against the Steelers this coming week, they still don't have any margin of error if they want to be the 1 seed. Because they only will be, because basically if they win, they'll be tied with the Steelers with the tiebreaker. So the Steelers could still easily finish ahead of them if the Pats have another trap game like this against the Bills. So I don't see that happening. And then they have Miami twice, so they could potentially win both those games. So they're definitely in it, but they definitely have a hard game ahead of them as well. Sorry. All right, number 14, the Baltimore Ravens. As we just said, they are tied with the Bills right now. I guess they actually fell out of the playoffs based on the tiebreakers. This is a 2-slot drop for them. I still think that they're going to beat out the Bills. So as I said, mostly scheduling thing. Off the top of my head, I know the Ravens have 3 easy games. I believe that they have I think it's the Colts. the Bengals, and the Browns. So that it could very easily be 3-0, which if they do that, I don't think any of these other teams will be able to catch them because they all have much tougher schedules. They're going to be beating up on each other. The teams that I'm going to be talking about right after them are the other AFC West teams, so one of them is going to win. Even if one of them ends up with a better record or might have been able to beat out the Ravens, that means they probably are going to win the division. So I think the Ravens are probably going to be the 6th seed, but it's still not over yet. All right, number 13, the Kansas City Chiefs, moving up 2 slots after they defeated the Raiders. That was a big game because it more or less knocked the Raiders out of the serious contention without a lot of other things happening for the AFC West. One problem the Raiders have is that the Chiefs and Chargers are playing, and they're both 1 game ahead. And I believe they do play the Chargers again, but they actually lost the first game to the Chargers, so the best they can hope for is to just even out the head-to-head tiebreaker with them, which they also did, which the Chiefs did with them last week. So regardless of who wins, they are going to be, even if they win, they're going to be with just 2 games to go, 1 game behind whoever wins the Chiefs-Chargers matchup, which makes it a lot harder for them to get in. So like I said, that was a big thing for the Chiefs. Obviously, they played the Chargers this week, who I do have ahead of them. But I only have them at number 12, so let's just go right into that. Number 12, the San Diego Chargers, moving up 1 slot. They destroyed the Redskins this week, which they needed to do, and needed to make sure they kept pace with whoever won the Chiefs-Raiders game. And now that they're going to be playing the Chiefs, pretty much I would say who wins this game is going to win the division. That's not a guarantee because these are all kind of mediocre teams, and there's still a couple games to go. And the Chiefs beat them the first time they played, so again, that would only even out the head-to-head record. And it also depends on how the rest of the games go, because right now, basically if the Chargers win the right games, their division games, and the Chiefs lose their division games, the best that the Chargers can do is also tie the Chiefs for division record, which is the first tiebreaker for the division. So then it falls down to the next tier of tiebreakers. So like this is far from over, even for the loser of this coming game. But I do think that will be difficult to overcome at that point, just because, like I said, the other team would have to lose one more game than whoever wins this game, just to bring those tiebreakers into play again. And if the Chiefs win, they actually will have the head-to-head tiebreaker, which will make it basically impossible. Well, I guess not impossible. If the Chiefs lose their last two and the Chargers win their last two, that would be the only way the Chargers could still take them. So that's a big game this week. I believe I think it's on the Saturday night game. So all eyes will be on that. All right, number 11, moving down one slot, the Tennessee Titans. Depending on what happens, I was talking about them with the 49ers. If they screw that game up like they did this Cardinals game this week, they definitely will take a big topple, because all of a sudden what looked like a sure playoff spot is going to be very much in jeopardy for them. Now, right now they're 8-5, securely in the 5th seed. But like I said, there's a lot of these teams that are kind of bouncing around. If they win one more game, I can't see them missing the playoffs, but they just made it a lot harder, so they have this 49ers game, but then they also have the Rams, and then the season finale against the Jags, which, if they play well, could still be a meaningful game for the Jags. If they don't, it might not be, so that could help them. But I can't imagine the Jags wouldn't be up for that game anyway. But like I said, 0-3 is not like crazy talk. Which is kind of pathetic, because I thought the Titans were going to be a very good team, and they have been disappointing me. Now, I had them as an 11-win team, so I guess if they win all three, they actually will be an 11-win team, so I can't say that they fell short of my expectations at all. I just have a hard time seeing that happen with the 49ers. They should be, but the Rams, I don't see why they should. Projecting out a couple of weeks, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to take the Rams over them in the game picks. And even though they destroyed the Jaguars earlier this year, it's hard to. The Jags have been playing pretty good recently, and the Titans have not. So, at this point, I have much less confidence that they can win that game either. All right, anyway, so done with the AFC also-rans, so let's move into the top 10. Number 10, falling down 3 slots, the Seattle Seahawks, losing to the Jaguars last week, and are currently out of the playoffs again, because they are tied with the current 6th seed, the Falcons, and they lose the tiebreaker. So they definitely don't fare all that well in the tiebreaker scenarios. So their best shot is to win this week against the Rams, in which case they're going to be tied for the division and will have the head-to-head tiebreaker with the season sweep, which that's going to be their best shot of making the playoffs. Best shot of both the Seahawks and Rams making the playoffs would be for the Seahawks to win the division, because the Rams do not have like these definitive bad tie-breaking scenarios that Seattle has with the Falcons as well as the Packers. And then I believe, they still have their head-to-head game with the Cowboys, so that would be a big deal for that potential tiebreaker as well. I don't know what's going to happen. I could see the Seahawks being like better than half the teams that end up making the playoffs but missing. So they need to get some stuff done, and especially if they can beat the Rams, that will help them a lot. If they lose that game, then I think that their playoff chances take a pretty huge dip. Number 9, the Jacksonville Jaguars, moving up 2 slots and by beating the Seahawks, and basically getting out of the also-ran category of, not also-ran, but of the who's going to make the playoffs from the AFC. Even if the Titans go apeshit the rest of the way, I can't see the Jaguars falling below both the Ravens and the Bills at this point, which is kind of what would have to happen. So I think they are all but locked into at least getting that wild card slot, even if they play terrible and the Titans play awesome. Most likely they're going to get the division, probably the 3rd seed, and a solid 3rd seed. They actually, if New England really plays crappy the rest of the way, the Jaguars could actually have a chance of surpassing them. I guess same thing is I guess they're still even close enough to the Steelers. I think the Steelers would have to lose out. But they do own the tiebreaker there. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think the New England thing is going to happen either, frankly, but it's just they're a little bit closer there. But I think that they are almost definitely going to get the 3 seed at this point. All right, moving on. At number 8, the Atlanta Falcons, who are not moving at all. That was a big win over the Saints. They're still behind the Saints, and they are still behind the Panthers for the division right now. But if they win out, which would involve beating both of those teams again, they will win the division. So that is they control their own destiny in that regard. I can't see that happening. I do think that they are probably going to make the playoffs, though, because they have that tiebreaker over Seattle. I believe they also have the tiebreaker. Yeah, they also have the tiebreaker over Green Bay. They also have the tiebreaker over the Cowboys. So like they are in pretty good shape as far as, and they are in very good position if they end up tied for anything. So that's why I think that's why they're here. So we have we basically have the NFC South as the next tier. So number 7, we have the Carolina Panthers moving up 2 slots after beating the Saints. After winning this week against the Vikings. Sorry. I was like, who do they play? After beating the Vikings. So that was kind of a little bit of a statement game, beating obviously the current at that moment the top team in the NFC. I do think that it showed some just issues with the Vikings more than the Panthers just coming out and dominating. There were definitely some broken plays that the Panthers, to the Panthers' credit, that they were able to call the right plays and take full advantage when the Vikings screwed up. The big Stewart run, the big Cam run, stuff like that. So I'm not totally discounting their performance, but I don't think the Vikings were clicking. They basically had like one little stretch where they were clicking, and then they went from being a blowout to being a very close game in like 2 minutes. But have to move them up here. Now they lose the tiebreaker to the Saints, but they're record-wise they're tied, and they are still ahead of the Falcons. So, and they are the playoffs, the number 5 seed right now. So you can't this is where they need to be. Even if I don't love them, this is they've earned this being at least this high. Number 6, moving down 1 slot, the Saints. So they lost to the Falcons, which opened up the division to the Falcons and kept the Panthers alive. As I said, so they swept the Panthers, so the Panthers do need to finish a game ahead of them, but now all of a sudden they're tied record-wise again with 3 to go. So, I mean, just finishing 1 game ahead of them is not that crazy. I don't think it's going to happen, as well as I don't think the Falcons are going to run the table and knock the Saints out either. But both are possible and they're not super far-fetched. But that is the reason I still have the Saints ahead of the other 2 teams, because I still think that they are the best of the 3 and will win the division. All right, number 5, moving down 1 slot, the LA Rams. Even though they won their game, they lost their game. What am I talking about? It was a good game, but they lost. So now they do. They don't look great in the tiebreaker situations. So they're going to be almost definitely either the 3rd or the 4th seed. Which I guess they could still lose the division, as we were saying, to the Seahawks. But assuming that they can hold on there, they probably top out at the 3rd or 4th seed. They played well in the loss. Obviously, they did play against the Wentz-led offense for most of the game. So the fact that he went down at the end is not going to be as big a factor as it's going to be for the teams that play the Eagles going forward. So I still like this team. I still think they're going to be a serious contender. I just don't know. I think them and the Saints are going to be serious contenders. I don't know if any of the wild card teams will do something. It's hard to say. But I think the NFC is definitely open, and those playoffs will be pretty exciting. All right, number 4, moving down 1 slot despite winning against the Rams, are the Eagles. This is 100% has to do with the fact that they lost Wentz. Now, it only moved them down 1 slot. though, given a couple of teams ahead of them lost, that's will probably piss some people off. But I moved them down one slot basically because they lost Wentz. The thing is, they have a good defense, they have a good running game, and Foles is, if not the best, he's got to be one of the 2 or 3 best backups in the league. Like going back, I mean, he had a superb, amazingly good season in 2013 as a starter. He wasn't bad in 2014 before he got hurt. Then 15 he was terrible, and last year he was a backup with Kansas City. But when he actually got into the game and making one start, his numbers were very good. So this is an experienced guy that has had a lot of success in the NFL, and actually specifically with the Eagles, because that's where he started. It's a completely different coaching staff now, but the city itself knows him, and I think has to still have some affection for him because of the fact he actually started the last playoff game for the Eagles. So I don't think the Eagles are dead in the water, but they went from being like the top team, or at least 1 and 1A with the Vikings, to being now I think they're more down in the the Rams or Saints probably could beat them, but I don't think that's this isn't Oakland last year. How's that for a comparison? When Carr went down last year, the Oakland Raiders were done. The Eagles actually have a very good team that was surrounding Wentz, and Foles is light years ahead of what the hell's were their names? I remember McGloin and Connor Cook, I think was the other. Those guys stunk. Foles is actually decent. So even though I would say Wentz is better this year than Carr was last year, the drop off is actually probably smaller, and the Eagles have a much better, well-rounded team. So I don't think that their season is over. It definitely took a big hit, and I don't see them as a top Super Bowl contender anymore, but they still could pull it off. And I don't think that they're just an easy one and done in the playoffs, like I said, like Oakland was last year. All right, number 3, moving down one slot with their loss to the Panthers, is the Minnesota Vikings. The Eagles are actually the number 1 seed still because they won their game while the Vikings lost. I don't know if that's going to hold up as the rest of this season plays out. I could still see the Eagles being number 1. I doubt the Vikings will fall to anything less than number 2. Then they could still take the 1 seed. So with the Eagles taking that hit, I think the Vikings are the best team in the NFC, and not a huge margin, but a little bit of a gap. So I kind of expect them to be the team to beat here on out. We'll see what happens the last couple of weeks with injuries and how each of these other contenders play. But at the moment, I definitely think the Vikings are the best team in the NFC and would be who I expect to come out of the conference. Number 2, moving down one slot, the New England Patriots. Not going to lie, I always kind of start these power rankings during Sunday, and just kind of see where things fall on the Monday. Like the week before it was the Steelers and the Bengals, so pretty much I had to wait to figure out exactly how my top 5 or 6 was going to shake out, and how my bottom of the rankings were going to shake out, but had all the middle. Had the same thing this week, but basically I slotted in the Pats still as number 1 because I assumed that they were going to win. Obviously I didn't publish anything, but I did have to go back and adjust a few things, and I did move Miami a couple more slots up. Because my thinking was unless Miami wins, I'm really not going to, even if they're competitive, or if they get totally blown out, I'm not really going to have them switch much otherwise. But then, of course, they won, so that actually changed a bit there. All right, so obviously we haven't talked about Pittsburgh yet, so they're going to be the one ahead of them. Again, I don't necessarily... Well, I do think the Patriots are the best team, to be honest. But with losing this game, the Steeler game is huge. Steeler game is at home. The Steelers have been winning all of their games. So even though it's really going to be... I could see either team winning. Right now, you have to like the Steelers a little bit better. And if they get home field, that's a big deal. Even though the Pats have not historically had much trouble going into Pittsburgh, that's not what they want to do. So it definitely makes their lives a lot harder. So that was a big loss for them against Miami going into that game. one of the knocks on the Steelers, and the knock I had, and one of the reasons that they were quite a few slots lower last week, was that they had been beating bad teams, but beating them on like last second field goals. The Ravens aren't a bad team, but they're still only like a fringe playoff team. And then beating Green Bay without Rodgers, and beating the Bengals, and beating the Colts like on the last second stuff was not impressing me. While the Patriots were playing crappy teams, but beating them by like 20 to 30 points kind of stuff. But if you were going to if you've played 4 games against bad teams and had to pull off last second scores to beat all of them, or if you could blow out 3 of them and then lose to the 4th, which would you rather have? Exactly, you'd rather win them all ugly than win 3 pretty and lose the other one. So that is why number 1 we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, moving up 5 slots. So actually they are tied for the biggest mover too. Basically, because everybody around them lost. The Saints lost, the Rams lost, the Vikings lost, the Pats lost, the Eagles won, but they lost their franchise quarterback for the year. So it's kind of not that hard to move them up a bit. So they have the best record, tied for the best record in the NFL, best record in the AFC. They have the Pats at home for what will more or less decide home field advantage, at least for them. As I mentioned earlier in one of the other blurbs, if they win this game, so now they're 1 game up on the Pats now with 3 to go. If they win the head-to-head game, they'll be up 2 games and have the tiebreaker, which means they can't lose. Even if they lost their other 2 games, they're still going to be the number 1 seed. With the Pats, however, if they win, they will be tied with the Steelers but own the tiebreaker. So they still would not have any margin of error if the Steelers win their games, but they would control their own destiny. So it's the Steelers can put it away, where the Patriots can just again get back into controlling their own destiny, but would have no margin of error, where the Steelers could still potentially be the number 1 seed just by basically if they go 2-0 and the Pats go 1-2. I'm sorry, 1-1 in the 2 games after this. So, as I've been saying for a while, it's basically a 2-team race in the AFC without a major upset happening. And based on what happened this week, the Steelers have a slightly better road to winning that game. But this will all change next week depending on what happens. Either the Steelers will solidify their place as number 1, most likely, or the Patriots will come back and take over that slot again with a win. Those are pretty much the only 2 things that can happen. The Vikings are not going to be number 1 next week. I'm just going to tell you that. And they're the only one who would really have a chance. All right. Anyway, thanks for watching, and please like, comment, and share the videos, and subscribe to our channel. You can also follow us on other social media. Facebook and Twitter are both @MA Sports Central. Thanks, and we will see you soon.